The arrival. Tom Baxter stepped off the shuttle with a small suitcase and a large sense of curiosity. The space station Icarus, orbiting the vibrant planet Zetar, buzzed with a blend of alien dialects and the hum of advanced technology. It was a crucial hub for diplomacy and trade, and Tom was here as Earth's youngest diplomat, tasked with negotiating vital trade agreements. As he navigated through the bustling docks, a fellow human, Commander Rick Daniels, approached him with a broad smile and an outstretched hand. "Tom Baxter?" "Rick Daniels. I'm your liaison while you're stationed here. Welcome to Icarus." "Thank you, Commander." "It's quite the place," Tom replied, taking in the myriad of species and tech around him. Rick chuckled as they walked. "It'll take some getting used to. Everyone does. But you'll find the Zetarians are a fascinating people once you get past their peculiarities." "Peculiarities?" Tom queried, his interest piqued. "They're transparent with their emotions, literally and metaphorically. Makes diplomacy interesting," Rick explained. They continued through a corridor lined with windows showcasing the planet below, a swirl of blue and green. Their conversation was briefly interrupted by a melodic voice. "Commander Daniels. And this must be the Earth diplomat I've heard about." The speaker was none other than Elora, a Zetarian, whose shimmering skin seemed to change color with her voice's cadence. "Elora, meet Tom Baxter. Tom, Elora is one of the top cultural attaches on Zetar. She'll be invaluable to you here," Rick introduced. "A pleasure to meet you," Tom said, extending his hand, fascinated by her presence. Elora's laugh was light, like chimes in a breeze. "The pleasure is mine, Tom. Humans are always so formal. Here, we embrace friends old and new." Instead of shaking his hand, she pulled him into a gentle hug, her warmth surprising him. "Speaking of embraces, remember to lock your door during the Alani season," her brother Zon, who had just approached, added with a sly grin. He was taller than Elora, with eyes that sparkled with mischief. Tom looked puzzled, and Rick quickly filled him in. "Zetarian mating season. It's a bit intense. Doors are respected, but an open one is seen as an invitation." Elora swatted at her brother playfully. "Ignore him, Tom. Let's show you around. There's much you need to see, and I'd be delighted to be your guide." Tom, still adjusting to the flurry of new information, nodded eagerly. "I'd appreciate that, Elora. There's a lot I need to learn." As they walked, Elora and Zon began pointing out various features of the station, from the gravity-defying garden domes that supplied fresh produce to the diplomatic quarters designed to accommodate species from different environments. "The garden domes are particularly important," Elora explained. "They not only provide sustenance, but also a place of peace. Many deals have been struck on a stroll through the lilies." Tom listened intently, absorbing every detail. "I can see why. It's easier to reach agreements in such calming surroundings." "Exactly," Elora agreed. "Speaking of which, there's a reception tonight. It's a perfect place to meet other delegates and some of our local dignitaries. What do you say?" Tom nodded, his diplomatic instincts kicking in. "I think that would be an excellent start." As they parted ways with Rick and Zon, Elora leaned in slightly, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. "And it's the perfect place to learn the finer points of Zetarian diplomacy. Just remember, the door advice wasn't entirely in jest." Tom smiled, intrigued and eager to learn more about the complex dance of interstellar diplomacy. "I'll keep that in mind." Their steps echoed down the corridor, a new friendship forming with each shared laugh and exchanged glance, setting the stage for a journey neither of them could fully anticipate. Chapter 2. The First Moons. Tom spent the following days immersed in the cultural and political intricacies of Zetar. His evenings, however, were spent in the company of Elora, who continued to introduce him to the wonders of her world. As the twin moons of Zetar approached their first alignment, a time of significant cultural importance, Elora's demeanor subtly shifted, becoming more playful and expressive. One evening, while walking through the hydroponic gardens on Icarus, Tom met Michael Chen, another Earth delegate, who was studying the effects of alien agriculture on human digestion. "Tom, this is fascinating," Michael said, examining a leaf that shimmered under the station's lights. "The nutritional possibilities are promising, but the real test is in the taste, don't you think?" Tom laughed. "I guess that depends on the chef. But it's incredible to see how much we can learn from each other's horticultural techniques." Elora, joining in on the conversation, plucked a violet fruit from a nearby branch and handed it to Tom. "Try this. It's perfectly ripe during the moon alignment." As Tom tasted the fruit, its flavor exploding like sweet fireworks, he noticed Elora watching him closely, a mischievous twinkle in her eye. "Delicious," he remarked, "and I see what you mean about the timing." Elora nodded. "Everything is connected to the cycle of the moons here, even our emotions." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Lucas Grant, a biologist specializing in xenobiology. "Tom, Elora," he greeted. "I was hoping to catch you." "Elora, I've been meaning to ask about the adaptability of Zetarian flora in human-controlled environments." Elora engaged eagerly, explaining the symbiotic relationships of Zetarian plants with their environment, which might pose a challenge in artificial ecosystems. As they talked, Tom observed the effortless way Elora shifted from playful to profoundly knowledgeable, her passion for her planet evident in every word. Later, as they continued their walk, Tom broached a topic he had been curious about since his arrival. "Elora, Zon mentioned something about keeping my door locked during the Alani season." He seemed to be joking, but there was a hint of seriousness. Elora smiled softly, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. "It's a time when many Zetarians seek deeper connections. It's not just physical, it's emotional, spiritual even. We are drawn to those who resonate with us, who can complement our energies, and leaving a door open is a sign of receptivity?" Tom asked, choosing his words carefully. "Exactly," Elora replied. "It's a sign that you're open to such connections, to understanding and experiencing our ways on a more intimate level." Tom considered this, the weight of her words settling in his mind. "And if one were, hypothetically, receptive?" Elora's laugh echoed softly in the evening air. "Then one might find themselves part of a very special aspect of Zetarian culture. But it's not to be taken lightly, Tom. It's a profound experience." Their discussion was thoughtful and open, setting a foundation of trust and curiosity. As they parted ways for the night, Tom felt a deeper pull towards understanding not just the politics of Zetar, but its people and their traditions. Back in his quarters, Tom stood by his door, his hand hesitating on the lock. The conversation with Elora played back in his mind, her words both an invitation and a warning. With a thoughtful smile, he decided to leave the door unlocked, a silent acknowledgment of his willingness to embrace whatever complexities lay ahead. Chapter 3. The Crossing of Paths. Tom awoke to a soft sound, like a gentle whisper against his door. He lay still for a moment, listening. The door swayed slightly, and then, as if pushed by an unseen force, it opened quietly. Elora stepped into the room, the light from the hallway casting a halo around her. Her eyes shimmered with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. "Did I wake you?" she asked, her voice a soft melody. "No, I was just about to get up," Tom lied, sitting up. "Is everything okay?" Elora nodded, moving closer. "The moons are aligned tonight," she said, gesturing towards the window where the twin moons of Zetar hung low in the sky, casting a serene glow. It's a special night, and I felt drawn here. Tom patted the space beside him on the bed, inviting her to sit. I left the door open, he confessed. I hoped you might visit. Elora smiled, taking a seat beside him. And I'm glad you did. There's much I want to share with you, about tonight, about Zeta. Their conversation deepened, with Elora explaining the emotional significance of the moon alignment to her people. It's a time when the heart speaks louder than words, she said. As they talked, there was a knock on the door. Tom called out, "It's open," and Michael Chan poked his head in, an awkward smile on his face. "Sorry to interrupt, but I saw the light. Everything all right here?" "We're just talking," Tom assured him, introducing Elora formally. Michael stepped in, his curiosity piqued. "Actually, I'm glad I found you both. I have some questions about the plant adaptations we discussed, Elora. And maybe, Tom, you can help with the human perspective." Elora agreed, and the trio spent the next hour discussing the symbiotic relationships between Zetarian plants and their environment. The discussion was technical yet fascinating, blending scientific curiosity with cultural exchange. As Michael prepared to leave, he turned to Tom. "You're settling in well here, Tom. It's good to see." After Michael left, the room fell into a comfortable silence. Elora turned to Tom, her expression thoughtful. "It's rare to find someone so open to our ways," she said. "Most are too caught up in their preconceptions." Tom took her hand, an impulse driven by the night's magic. "I want to understand, Elora. Not just your plants or your politics, but you." Elora's skin seemed to glow brighter, her emotions visibly swirling. "Then let us share something unique tonight," she suggested. "Let me show you the dance of the moons." Intrigued, Tom nodded, and Elora stood, pulling him gently to his feet. She began to move gracefully around the room, her movements mirroring the lunar dance outside. Tom followed as best he could, laughing at his own clumsiness. "You're doing well," Elora encouraged, her hands guiding his. "The dance is about harmony, about finding balance with a partner." As they danced, Tom felt a connection deeper than he had anticipated. It was as if the dance was a language of its own, telling stories of unity and understanding. When the dance ended, they were breathless and laughing, standing close in the soft moonlight. "This was a beautiful night, Elora. Thank you for sharing it with me," Tom said, his voice low. Elora looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the twin moons. "Thank you for being open to it," she replied. "It means more than you know." They parted with a newfound closeness, a promise of more shared moments. Tom watched her leave, her figure a silhouette against the hallway light, feeling a profound sense of connection to Zetar, its moons, and its people. Chapter 4. Cultural Rendezvous. Tom adjusted the collar of his formal Earth-style jacket, glancing at his reflection in the polished surface of his room's console. Tonight's cultural gathering, held in the grand atrium of Icarus Station, was more than just a social event. It was an opportunity to connect with delegates, understand Zetarian traditions, and perhaps deepen his bond with Elora. There was a knock at the door, and when Tom opened it, he found Commander Rick Daniels and Michael Chen waiting. Rick was dressed in a crisp uniform, while Michael had opted for a hybrid outfit combining human and Zetarian styles. "You ready for this, Baxter?" Rick asked, slapping Tom on the shoulder. "As ready as I'll ever be," Tom replied, "though I'm not sure what to expect." "Expect the unexpected," Michael said with a grin. "Zetarian gatherings are like nothing you've ever seen. And don't be surprised if someone asks you to dance." Tom laughed, remembering his impromptu dance with Elora the night before. "I think I'll manage." The trio made their way to the atrium, a vast, domed space filled with the soft glow of bioluminescent plants and illuminated by the twin moons visible through the transparent ceiling. Delegates from various planets mingled, their voices blending into a harmonious hum. Zaterian musicians played intricate melodies on instruments that seemed to shimmer and pulse with light. Elora spotted them first, weaving through the crowd with her characteristic grace. She wore a flowing garment that shifted colors with her movements, a visual representation of her emotions. "Tom, Rick, Michael," she greeted warmly. "I'm so glad you're here." "You look stunning," Tom said, the words escaping before he could second-guess them. Elora's skin brightened slightly, her equivalent of a blush. "Thank you, Tom. Come, there's much to see and taste." She led them to a long table laden with dishes, each more exotic than the last. "Careful with that one," Rick warned, pointing to a bright red sphere. "It's like eating fire." Elora laughed. "It's a delicacy, Rick. You're just not brave enough." Tom decided to try the red sphere, much to Rick's amusement. The initial heat was intense, but it quickly gave way to a sweet, floral flavor. "Not bad," Tom managed, his eyes watering slightly. "You're braver than most," Elora said with a smile. As they sampled more dishes, Elora explained the significance of each. "This blue fruit symbolizes unity. It's shared during important negotiations to remind both sides of their common ground." "Fascinating," Michael said, taking notes on a small device. "Food as a cultural bridge. It's brilliant." A Zaterian elder approached their group, his deep voice resonating as he spoke. "Elora, would you introduce your friends to the way of the orbs?" "Of course," she replied, her excitement evident. She turned to Tom and the others. "This is a traditional activity during our gatherings. It's a game of coordination and trust." The elder presented a set of floating orbs that emitted soft, pulsating lights. "The goal is simple," he explained. "Keep the orbs in motion without letting them touch the ground. It requires teamwork and synchronization." Rick raised an eyebrow. "Sounds easy enough." "It's harder than it looks," Elora said with a grin. "Come on, let's form a team." The group positioned themselves in a circle, and the orbs began to move. At first they stumbled, the orbs dropping frequently. But as they learned to anticipate each other's movements, their coordination improved. Tom noticed how Elora subtly guided the group, her natural leadership shining through. "You're good at this," Tom said to her as they passed an orb back and forth. "It's about feeling the rhythm," Elora replied. "Much like the dance of the moons." The mention of their previous night's dance brought a shared glance between them, a moment of connection that didn't go unnoticed by Rick. "All right, lovebirds, focus," Rick teased, tossing an orb to Michael. The game ended with applause from the spectators, and the elder nodded approvingly. "You work well together. This bodes well for your shared future." Elora's skin shifted to a soft gold, and Tom felt a warmth he couldn't entirely attribute to the room's temperature. Later, as the group wandered through the atrium, Elora led Tom to a quieter corner near the viewing deck. "You did well tonight," she said. "The way of the orbs is more than just a game. It's a reflection of unity and trust." "I'm beginning to see that," Tom replied. "There's so much depth to your culture. It's humbling." Elora reached out, her fingers brushing his arm. "And you're willing to embrace it, which is rare. That means a lot to me." Tom hesitated, then placed his hand over hers. "You mean a lot to me, Elora. More than I expected when I first arrived." Their moment was interrupted by Rick and Michael, who called out from across the room. "Hey, Baxter, come join us for a drink." Elora smiled, stepping back. "Go, enjoy yourself. Tonight is about celebrating connections." As Tom rejoined his friends, he couldn't shake the feeling that his connection with Elora was something special, something worth exploring. The night continued with laughter, shared stories, and the unspoken promise of what was to come. Chapter 5. The Heart of the Station. Tom leaned against the railing of the observation deck, staring out at the planet Zetar below. The twin moons, still aligned, bathed the station in a soft, ethereal glow. He couldn't shake the memory of Ellora's touch from the night before, or the way her eyes seemed to mirror the stars. His thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Rick and Michael, who both carried steaming mugs of a Zetarian brew. "You've been staring at that planet like it's got the answers to the universe," Rick said, handing Tom a mug. "Care to share what's on your mind?" Tom chuckled, taking the drink. "Just thinking. It's hard not to when you're surrounded by all of this." Michael took a seat on a nearby bench, setting his mug beside him. "Let me guess. It's not the station or the view that's keeping you up at night. It's Ellora." Tom glanced at him, surprised. "That obvious?" Rick grinned. "To us, yes. You've got the look of a guy who's in over his head, and liking it." Tom sighed, leaning back against the railing. "She's incredible. Everything about her, from the way she explains her culture to the way she moves. It's like she's part of something bigger, and I'm just trying to keep up." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "She's definitely unique. But you're not just some tourist, Tom. You're here to build connections, and if she's part of that, it's worth exploring." Rick raised his mug. "Exactly. And speaking of exploring, the Zetarian Council invited us to tour the core of the station today. It's a rare opportunity to see how this place actually functions." Tom perked up. "The heart of the station? Isn't that where all the environmental systems are managed?" "Among other things," Michael added. "It's a blend of Zetarian and human technology. They're proud of it, and for good reason." The trio made their way to the core, escorted by a Zetarian engineer named Calix. He was tall, with silver-toned skin that shimmered as he spoke. "The core is not just the station's brain, it's its soul," Calix explained as they walked through a series of secured doors. "Every system, from life support to the gardens, is interconnected. You'll see what I mean shortly." They entered a massive, domed chamber filled with glowing conduits and floating panels. In the center, a swirling sphere of light pulsed rhythmically, surrounded by intricate machinery. Ellora was already there, speaking with another Zetarian. She turned and waved when she saw them. "Welcome to the heart of Icarus," Ellora said, her voice warm. "This is where everything comes together. Technology, biology, and harmony." Tom stepped closer to the central sphere, captivated. "What is it?" "It's the Nexus core," Ellora explained, joining him. "It monitors and adapts to the needs of the station's inhabitants. It's a blend of Zetarian biotechnology and human engineering." Michael pointed to a nearby console. "So this controls everything? Air, gravity, water?" "Yes," Calix confirmed. "But it's not just about control. The core learns and grows, much like a living being. It senses the needs of those aboard and adjusts accordingly." Rick tapped on a floating panel, which displayed a real-time map of the station. "Impressive. This level of integration is decades ahead of anything we've got back home." As they explored, Calix demonstrated how the system worked, from purifying the air in the gardens to regulating temperature in the living quarters. Tom couldn't help but notice how Ellora's excitement mirrored Calix's as she explained the cultural significance of the Nexus core. "This isn't just technology to us," Ellora said, her voice filled with pride. "It represents unity, a collaboration between species, working together for the greater good." Rick smirked. "And here I thought it was just a fancy air conditioner." Ellora laughed. "It's much more than that, Commander." Tom stayed close to Ellora as the tour continued, asking questions and soaking in her explanations. When the group paused near the observation deck overlooking the core, Elora turned to Tom. "You seem quiet," she said. "What are you thinking?" Tom hesitated before answering. "I'm thinking about how different our worlds are, and yet we've managed to create something incredible together. It's inspiring." Elora's expression softened. "It's because we focus on what we share, not what divides us." Michael interrupted with a question about the power sources, drawing Elora and Calix into a technical discussion. Tom used the opportunity to take a closer look at the core, marveling at its complexity. Rick joined him, leaning in. "You've got it bad, don't you?" Tom gave him a sidelong glance. "She's different." Rick nodded. "Yeah, she is. Just make sure you know what you're getting into. Zaitarians don't do anything halfway." The tour concluded with a demonstration of the core's adaptability, and the group parted ways. Elora lingered, walking with Tom as they returned to the upper levels. "I'm glad you came today," she said. "You're not like most humans I've met." "How so?" Tom asked. "You're curious, open, willing to see things from a different perspective. That's rare." Tom smiled. "I think I've had a good teacher." They stopped at a crossroads in the corridor, the glow of the station's lights reflecting off Elora's skin. For a moment, neither spoke, the silence filled with unspoken understanding. "Good night, Tom," Elora said softly, turning to leave. "Good night, Elora," Tom replied, watching her go. As he walked back to his quarters, he couldn't shake the feeling that something profound had shifted, not just in his understanding of Zatar, but in himself. Chapter 6. Misunderstandings and Moonlight. Tom strode into the station's main marketplace, his mind still buzzing with the morning's discussions. He had spent hours reviewing trade proposals with Rick and Michael, balancing the complexities of interstellar negotiations. Now, he was on a personal mission, finding a gift for Elora. The marketplace was alive with activity, bustling with vendors and shoppers from various species. Stalls overflowed with items, shimmering fabrics, glowing crystals, and fragrant spices. Tom's attention was caught by a small booth displaying intricate jewelry made of iridescent stones that shifted colors in the light. "Perfect," he muttered, picking up a delicate pendant that reminded him of Elora's ever-changing skin tones. Behind the counter, a Zaitarian merchant grinned. "Ah, a fine choice. For someone special?" Tom nodded. "Yes, someone very special." The merchant wrapped the pendant carefully, offering Tom a piece of advice. "Be sure to understand its meaning before you gift it. Our traditions carry weight." Tom frowned. "Meaning?" The merchant explained. "This particular design symbolizes commitment. It's given when one wishes to declare intentions for a deeper bond." Tom hesitated, unsure. Was this too forward? Elora had shared so much with him, but he didn't want to risk misinterpreting her feelings. Deciding to proceed, he thanked the merchant and made his way to Elora's quarters. When Elora opened the door, she greeted him with a warm smile. "Tom, I wasn't expecting you." "I wanted to see you," Tom said, holding up the small package. "I found something that reminded me of you." Elora took the gift, her expression curious. As she unwrapped it, her skin shimmered with a mixture of surprise and hesitation. "Tom, this is beautiful. But do you know what it means?" Tom nodded. "The merchant explained it to me. I thought it reflected how much I value what we've shared." Elora's skin dimmed slightly, a sign of uncertainty. "It's a lovely gesture, but among my people, this symbol carries an unspoken expectation. It's not something given lightly." Tom's heart sank. "I didn't mean to overstep." I just wanted to show you how much you mean to me. Ella sighed, placing the pendant on a nearby table. It's not about overstepping, Tom. It's about understanding. Zaitarian relationships are deeply entwined with our traditions. A gesture like this can carry more weight than words. Before Tom could respond, Zon appeared in the doorway, his expression a mix of curiosity and amusement. Am I interrupting something? Ella turned to her brother. No, Zon. Tom and I were just discussing cultural misunderstandings. Zon chuckled. Sounds like someone's learning the hard way. Don't worry, Tom. You're not the first human to stumble over our traditions. Tom managed a weak smile. I'll take that as reassurance. Ella glanced between the two men, her skin lightening slightly. Perhaps I overreacted. Tom, I appreciate the thought behind your gift. It's just, we have to navigate these things carefully. Understood, Tom said, his voice soft. I didn't mean to make things complicated. Zon clapped Tom on the back. Complicated is part of the deal, my friend. If you're serious about understanding us, you'll have to get used to it. Ella offered a small smile. Let's take a walk. I think we could both use some fresh air. Tom followed her into the station's central garden, where bioluminescent plants glowed softly under the artificial night. The silence between them was heavy, but not uncomfortable. I want to get it right, Tom said finally. Whatever this is between us, it matters to me. Ella stopped, turning to face him. It matters to me too, Tom. That's why I reacted the way I did. Our bonds are built on mutual understanding, and I want you to see the depth of what we're building. Tom nodded, his gaze meeting hers. Then help me understand. Show me what it means to be part of your world. Ella's expression softened. I'll do my best. But you have to promise me one thing. Anything, Tom said. Be patient. With me, with yourself, and with the process. Our ways take time to learn. I can do that, Tom said, his voice steady. Ella smiled, reaching out to touch his hand. Then let's start over, Tom. Tonight is the second alignment of the moons, a time for clarity. Walk with me, and I'll share more of what this night means to us. They strolled through the garden, their steps slow and deliberate. Ella pointed out the plants whose blossoms only opened during the alignments, explaining their significance in Zaitarian culture. Her voice was calm, her words weaving a tapestry of tradition and emotion. As they walked, the tension between them eased, replaced by a quiet understanding. When they reached a clearing, Ella stopped and turned to Tom. This is where we perform the moonlight bond, she said, gesturing to a circle of glowing stones. It's a ritual of trust and unity. Tom hesitated. Is this something I'm allowed to participate in? Ella nodded. If you're willing. It's not binding, but it's meaningful. Tom stepped into the circle beside her, mirroring her movements as she guided him through the ritual. The act was simple yet profound, a silent exchange of trust and intention under the light of the moons. When it was over, Ella turned to him, her expression serene. Thank you for being open to this, Tom. It means more than words can express. Tom reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Thank you for showing me. I'm learning more every day. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the weight of misunderstandings faded, leaving only the connection they had built. As the moons cast their glow over the garden, they stood together, the night's tension giving way to something deeper and unspoken. Chapter 7. The Apology. Tom paced nervously in his quarters, the pendant lying on the desk before him. The weight of his earlier misunderstanding with Ella pressed heavily on him. While their moonlit ritual had eased some of the tension, He could still sense an unspoken hesitation in her. He needed to make things right, and he needed help. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Rick Daniels leaned casually against the frame, a mug of coffee in hand. "You've been avoiding us since yesterday. What's going on?" Tom sighed and gestured for Rick to enter. "I messed up with Elora." Rick set his mug down and crossed his arms. "How bad are we talking?" "I gave her a gift, a pendant. I didn't realize it symbolized something more serious in their culture," Tom admitted. "She wasn't angry, but I could tell it unsettled her." Rick chuckled. "Cultural missteps are par for the course here, man. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "That's the thing, I don't know. I want to apologize, but it has to be meaningful." Rick thought for a moment. "Why don't you talk to someone who knows her better? Zon might have some advice." Tom hesitated. "You think he'll help me?" Rick smirked. "Zon's protective of her, sure, but he's also practical. If you approach him the right way, he might surprise you." Tom found Zon in the station's recreational hall, playing a fast-paced strategy game with Michael Chen. The holographic board shifted dynamically as they made their moves. "Tom, come to watch me destroy Michael's confidence," Zon teased, flashing a grin. "More like rescue me from his trash talk," Michael replied, gesturing for Tom to join them. Tom shook his head. "Actually, Zon, I was hoping to talk to you. Privately, if that's all right." Zon raised an eyebrow but nodded. "All right. Let's step outside." Once they were in the quieter corridor, Tom took a deep breath. "I need your advice. I upset Elora, and I want to make it right." Zon crossed his arms, studying Tom carefully. "What exactly happened?" Tom explained the situation, including the unintended implications of the pendant. When he finished, Zon was silent for a moment. "You're lucky she didn't take it as an outright proposal," Zon said finally, his tone teasing but serious. "But I'll give you credit. You're trying." "So, how do I fix it?" Tom asked earnestly. Zon leaned against the wall, considering. "Elora values honesty and effort. If you want to apologize, show her you've taken the time to understand our ways. There's a Zaterian poem she loves. It's about unity and connection. Learn it and recite it to her. That'll show her you're willing to put in the effort." Tom nodded, grateful. "Thanks, Zon. Do you have the poem?" Zon smirked. "I'll send it to your console. Just don't butcher the pronunciation." Tom spent the next several hours practicing the poem. The Zaterian language was complex, with subtle tonal shifts that changed meanings entirely. Michael stopped by at one point, offering encouragement while poking fun at Tom's repeated mispronunciations. "Hey, at least she'll appreciate the effort," Michael said. "Even if you sound like a drunk trying to sing opera." "Helpful as always," Tom muttered, earning a laugh. When evening fell, Tom made his way to the observation deck where Elora often spent her time. He found her gazing out at the stars, her skin shimmering softly in the dim light. "Elora," Tom said, his voice steady despite the nervous knot in his stomach. She turned, her expression curious. "Tom, I wasn't expecting you." "I owe you an apology," he said, "for the misunderstanding with the pendant. I didn't realize the significance, and I never meant to make you uncomfortable." Elora tilted her head, her skin shifting to a calm, muted tone. "You've already explained, Tom. I wasn't upset, just surprised." "I know," Tom said, stepping closer. "But I wanted to do more than just explain. I wanted to show you that I'm serious about understanding your culture." He took a deep breath and began reciting the poem Zahn had taught him. His pronunciation wasn't perfect, but he delivered it with sincerity, his voice steady and clear. Ellora's eyes widened as she listened, her skin brightening with each word. When he finished, there was a moment of silence. Ellora stepped forward, her expression soft. "You learned that for me?" Tom nodded. "I wanted to show you how much I care, and how much I want to get this right." Ellora reached out, placing a hand on his cheek. "It was beautiful, Tom, and it means more than you know." They stood there for a moment, the silence filled with the unspoken understanding between them. Ellora's hand slipped down to his, her fingers entwining with his. "I think we're both learning," she said. "And that's what matters." Tom smiled, the tension from the past day finally lifting. "Thank you for being patient with me." Ellora laughed softly. "Patience is a virtue, especially with humans." They spent the rest of the evening on the observation deck, talking about their worlds, their cultures, and their shared dreams for the future. The stars outside seemed to shine a little brighter, as if reflecting the growing connection between them. Chapter 8. Unity Beyond the Stars. Tom stood at the docking bay, watching as Ellora prepared the small shuttle that would take them to Zetar's surface. It had been weeks since he arrived on Icarus, and now he was heading to the planet itself, a chance to see Ellora's world firsthand. Beside him, Rick and Michael waited, their expressions a mix of curiosity and mild envy. "Still can't believe you're heading down there," Rick said, crossing his arms. "I've been here for 2 years, and I've never set foot on Zetar." "You're not missing much," Michael teased, "unless you like endless discussions about plants and glowing rocks." "Jealousy doesn't suit you, Michael," Tom replied with a grin. "Besides, this isn't just a sightseeing trip. Ellora's arranged for me to meet some of their council members. It's an opportunity to strengthen relations." "Yeah, and an opportunity to impress her family," Rick added with a wink. Tom rolled his eyes but didn't deny it. Ellora had mentioned that their visit would include a dinner with her closest kin, and the thought made his palms sweat. Ellora approached, her usual graceful movements carrying a touch of excitement. "The shuttle's ready." "Are you?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Tom replied. Rick clapped him on the shoulder. "Good luck down there. Don't say anything that'll start an interstellar incident." "I'll do my best," Tom said, laughing. He and Ellora boarded the shuttle, the hum of its engines rising as they prepared for takeoff. Zetar's atmosphere was a kaleidoscope of colors, the twin moons casting their glow across sprawling landscapes of bioluminescent forests and shimmering rivers. As the shuttle descended, Tom couldn't help but stare in awe. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Ellora smiled. "I've always thought so. I'm glad you can see it now." They landed in a small clearing surrounded by glowing trees. A group of Zetarians awaited them, their expressions warm and welcoming. Ellora introduced Tom to her kin, including her elder cousin Sorin, who was a prominent figure on the council. Sorin extended a hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome to Zetar, Tom. Ellora has spoken highly of you." "It's an honor to be here," Tom replied, shaking his hand. "I'm looking forward to learning more about your world." As they walked toward the village, Tom marveled at the seamless integration of nature and technology. Structures seemed to grow organically from the land, their surfaces glowing softly with embedded lights. Ellora explained how every building was designed to harmonize with its surroundings, reflecting the Zetarian philosophy of balance. At dinner, Tom found himself seated among Ellora's family, who were eager to ask him questions about Earth. The conversation ranged from human art to the challenges of living on a planet with only one moon. Tom answered as best he could, his nerves easing as the warmth of their hospitality surrounded him. You must be quite adaptable, Soren said, pouring Tom a glass of a sparkling amber drink. It's rare for humans to embrace our ways so willingly. Elora has been an incredible guide, Tom replied, glancing at her. She's made it easy to understand and appreciate your culture. Elora's skin glowed faintly, a sign of her emotion, though she said nothing. After the meal, Elora led Tom to a quiet hill overlooking the village. The night sky above them was alive with stars, the twin moons casting long shadows on the ground. "I hope my family didn't overwhelm you," Elora said, sitting beside him. "Not at all. They were wonderful," Tom replied, "though I think Soren might still be trying to figure me out." Elora laughed. "He's protective, but he respects sincerity. You did well tonight." Tom leaned back on his hands, gazing at the stars. "This place, it feels like something out of a dream. I've never seen anything like it." "It's home," Elora said simply, "and I wanted you to see it because you've become important to me, Tom." He turned to her, surprised by her candor. "Elora, you're important to me too. More than I can put into words." She reached for his hand, her touch warm and steady. "We've come so far in such a short time, and while there's still much to learn, I want to keep walking this path with you." Tom tightened his grip on her hand. "I want that too. Whatever it takes, I'm in." They sat in silence for a moment, the connection between them unspoken but undeniable. The gentle breeze carried the faint hum of the village below, a reminder of the harmony that defined Elora's world. "Tom," Elora said softly, breaking the silence, "when you first came to Icarus, did you ever imagine this?" "Not in my wildest dreams," he admitted. "But now, I can't imagine not being here, not being with you." Elora leaned closer, her gaze meeting his. "Then let's see where this takes us. Together." Their lips met in a kiss that was both tender and full of promise, the stars above bearing silent witness to the union of two worlds. As they pulled apart, Elora rested her forehead against his, her voice barely a whisper. "The moons will align again soon, and when they do, we'll face it as one." Tom smiled, his heart full. "I wouldn't have it any other way." As the night deepened, they stayed on the hill, wrapped in each other's presence, their journey just beginning, one of understanding, connection, and a bond that transcended the stars.